How do you know what pair of waders to buy for fly fishing? Should you spend a whole bunch of money and get a really expensive pair, or should you just go with the cheap ones? Do you really need a zipper? And what about all that Gore-Tex stuff people are talking about? These are just a few of the questions that we get here at Untangled about waders all the time. So to help answer these questions really well, I actually sat down with two experts. I went and visited with Kevin Sloane and Rich Hohne from Skwala Fishing, a very respected brand in the wader industry, to hopefully answer all of the questions that you could ever have about fly fishing waders. Together, Rich and Kevin are going to teach you everything that you need to know about waders, so make sure you listen to today's episode. Oh, and one more thing. Skwala wants to give Untangled listeners a special surprise, so you're going to want to stay tuned to the end of the show to find out exactly what that surprise is. This is Untangled, fly fishing for everyone, presented by Ventures Fly Company. Hey everybody, welcome to it. This is Untangled. I am your host, Spencer Durrant. I'm here in Montana, the land of wild trout and wilder California transplants. In the heart of fly fishing country in Bozeman, I am with the folks at Skwala Fly Fishing. No, it's just Skwala Fishing, right?
Yeah, either one.
Yeah, either one. We've got Kevin Sloane, CEO, with us, and Rich Hohne, not Hohne, the CMO, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I got your titles.
You got it right.
There we go. Like I said, Skwala Fishing, makers of technical fly fishing apparel. We've got a bunch of questions lately, asking about waders, about buying waders, about what we recommend at VFC. So I wanted to get some experts on to walk us through that. And there's nobody really better than you two for me to pull in. And folks who have been watching the shows on YouTube, you guys have seen us wearing Skwala waders in most of our videos at VFC. So it was an easy decision to come talk to you guys, but we paid for all our Skwala stuff up front because we believe in it. So Skwala hasn't given us anything to consider. This is just something that we believe in, so I wanted to share it with the audience at large. But enough of that. Let's. I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk shop with me for a bit.
It's good to be here.
Thanks for having us on.
Of course. Well, let's. I want to start with you guys first, though, and get through. Tell us who you are. Kevin, you want to start? What's your story, man? What's your fish story?
What's my fish story?
Yeah, what's your fish story?
I started fly fishing when I was 10. Actually, I like telling this story because everyone kind of needs a mentor, and mine was kind of odd. My dad didn't fish, but I had interest in it. And so when I was 10 years old, my dad took me to like a Trout Unlimited, like a Sunday afternoon barbecue. And I watched a guy cast a fly rod, and I was like mesmerized. And I sat and I watched this guy, and he kind of took note of this kid that was paying attention. And this is, to date myself a bit, this would have been like early 80s.
Yeah.
And so like there weren't a lot of people fly fishing. It wasn't a popular thing.
Yeah.
And most of the people who were doing it were like 70. And so he has this little kid who's watching him, and he took me aside and spent like an hour with me and taught me to cast a little bit. And on the way home, my dad bought me my first fly rod and off to the races.
Look at that. One of those old fiberglass ones or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it was called a Kunon. It was not a fast action, high performance fly rod. But it got it done, and it got for me for a while until I really got into it when I was in high school. But I was lucky, and I had a great fly shop owner, a guy named Tommy Eiler's Fly Shop in outside of Philadelphia. And he took me under his wing all the way through high school and set me up for my first trips.
Yeah.
Traveling out west and going different places. And
awesome. And then that kind of snowballed into you getting into the apparel side of things too, right?
Yeah, ultimately.
Yeah.
I started guiding when I was 19. I moved out west and guided, was a product tester and did some stuff with Orvis. And then ultimately, in the kind of mid 90s, I went to work for Orvis as a product development guy.
Awesome. And now here you are back in Montana instead of Vermont.
Yeah.
So not a bad place to be.
It's a great place to be.
Well, what about you, Rich? What's your fish story?
Well, I grew up, we were talking about this in the river a little bit yesterday. I grew up youngest of 7 kids, and when you have 7 kids, put everybody on a plane to Europe or whatever. You own a motor home and you drive up to the mountains. And I grew up in Southern California.
Yeah.
And we would go up to the Sierra every year and spend a couple weeks up there and drive around and fish. And I would, similar to Kevin, I can remember when, I was a spin fisherman and I'd grab my little Panther Martins and stuff and go catch these little stock trout. And, I can remember my brother being a big fly angler and being mesmerized by that. And he was pretty big influence on my life. And so it sort of progressed into that zone and then did the college thing and then moved up to Montana and sort of sold my soul officially and guided as well in like that mid-90s zone and worked at a lodge and then did some retail in the fly fishing space. And then slowly about 7 years later ended up getting back in the fly fishing world after being in the ski world. And so just kind of been ping-ponging around and doing these passion projects, which has been awesome, and then been at Skwala for the last about year and a half now.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what do you guys feel like? Because one of the things I admire the most about Skwala's stuff, and one of the reasons I want to talk to you guys specifically about waders, what was the driving force behind wanting to get into the technical apparel side of things? Because you guys obviously guided, both of you know the business. Kevin, your product testing. So what made you think, all right, well, we need to do it better, or we need to do it different at the very least? Yeah,
I think I spent a little over a decade leading Sitka, the hunting apparel company. And, we and being a passionate fly angler as well as a hunter, we always kind of looked at what was going on in the space. And we spent a lot of time in it. And I think one of the things that we saw what we were able to do with hunting apparel and how we were able to progress that and the technologies we were able to bring to essentially give people a better day in the field, right? That was our whole goal. Is like, how do we truly build comfort? And when we looked at this fly fishing space, we're like, you know what, we have skills and we have the ability to bring something here, whether it be in textile technology, whether it be in design and how we're building things, how we're constructing things. And we believed we could do it better and take a different view of how and why to build certain things in technical apparel for this space.
Yeah.
We also, when we looked at it, when I really started looking at this about 5 or 6 years ago, one of the things we looked at is if you looked at the 10 years prior, it didn't seem like much had changed. Wading jackets were short, dark green, big billows pocket. It didn't matter what brand, right?
Yeah.
It all kind of looked the same and didn't feel like it had evolved. And we knew we could bring textile technology and implement stretch in certain places, get away from the big, bulky kind of product and build like truly fitted gear that moved with you.
Yeah. So what does that mean then for the angler who we're just starting out and we're wanting to buy a new set of waders, or maybe even our first set of waders? What does that translate to for folks like that who want to who want to get into this sport, really try it out, but you go to any of the big box stores, you look at the wader rack, like how do you tell the difference between what's good and why is this one $50 or can you even buy waders for $50 anymore?
Probably not.
I don't think so.
Could you get neoprene for $50?
No,
You used to be able to.
No.
Yeah, that'll date myself a little bit right there. So, but yeah, so what does that mean though for the angler who's looking at a new pair of waders? What does Skwala offer them?
So, I think the first thing to think about with waders are one of the bigger purchases you're going to make in all of this as you get into fly fishing. Right?
Yeah.
It's the least forgiving product in your entire kit of gear. Right?
What do you mean by that?
So, if you think about what you're asking a wader to do, especially today's waders, right? When we go back to neoprene, you've got a lot of forgiveness because you have this thick textile that you can just basically bond and glue together. But now when we're talking about breathable waders, we focus a lot on breathability. It's one of the things people really notice about our product. And so breathability and fit, I would say, are two things that generate comfort. Right? You really want your waders to fit. That's an important thing. No matter what wader you buy, if it's too big or too small, both of them cause problems in durability. If they're too small, you're going to stress the seams out and ultimately get a leak. And if they're too big, you end up with getting like wear marks and rubbing where you have excess material and all that. So, first and foremost is make sure your waders fit.
So fit is really important. What else should we be looking at other than fit? Like, where does the material come into it? Because again, we go back to, you go to the big box store and some people are making it with Gore-Tex and some people are making it with, whatever. So where does the material side come into this?
We start, it's one of the things we do in development. We start materials first most of the time. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, before we even do a design, we're doing material selection. So we build around that. And if a material has a certain amount of stretch or a certain amount of stiffness, we're building the fit of our product around how that material behaves. In terms of someone going to a store and we always laugh, people kind of pet it. They kind of grab it and rub it in their fingers, and you really can't tell much from that.
Yeah.
We've all been at this. I've been in technical apparel for 20 something years, and I can tell you, I can't tell that much from doing that.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, you have to rely on the reputation of the brand. We put a lot into materials. That's literally, that is normally the biggest conversation as we develop a product.
Yeah.
Is the material side of it. And for us, it's making sure that lives up to what our brand stands for.
Yeah. So fit and material, we're going to say those are the two things that you should really look for, fit and material. So definitely, and I tell this folks too, go try your waders on before you buy them.
Always.
How important is that, Rich?
It's so important.
Yeah.
I think, I think people underestimate a few things. First of all, how important waders just are in general compared to hard goods. We think about buying the new rod or buying the new reel. I think waders are absolutely vital component to having a great day out on the water.
Yeah.
Being comfortable. Yesterday when we were out on the water and it was pretty breezy and probably about 38, 40 degrees, but we were comfortable and we were hanging out and we didn't have to get chased off the water. And I think that's the thing that people need to understand. And then knowing what fit you are. Like I'm between a large and a large tall generally, right? So I want to make sure that I try both of those on to make sure that the one that I am going to be in is going to give me full range of motion. I mean, if you think about the right fit is basically a euphemism for being able to move effortlessly, right? We talk about the fact that, we don't want you to move in the wader. We want you to move with the wader.
Yeah.
And so having that right fit, just like it is in a really good technical piece in a lot of different sports or hobbies, in fishing, you're going to be able to move so much better and you're going to be more comfortable. And also the textile is going to wear the right way. It's not going to be rubbing, in weird spots because you have too much material or it's stretching too much and stressing out the fabric. But go try them on. Try on 2 or 3 sizes to make sure you absolutely know the right thing. Also getting in the right size. Stocking foot is going to be important too. Are you 9-11 or 12-14 in our instance?
Yeah.
That's going to help you with comfort throughout the day and warmth as well. So absolutely try them on as best if you can. If you're ordering them online through a retailer or from us or something, then sometimes that's going to be tough to do. And if you know your size, it's not that risky. But if you go into a shop, definitely try on a couple pairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting about, if you think about what a wader has to do from fit, and this is why we really talk a lot about that, is, if you have a jacket and a pair of pants, they kind of float independently, right? With a wader, it's essentially, you have a jacket up to your shoulders and a pair of pants that are bonded together. And by the way, it attaches all the way to the heel of your foot. Yeah. So like your pants, they're a little bit too short, a little bit too long. Hey, that's okay. Right. But in the case of a wader, it's actually, it all starts at your heel where the booty's attachment and it has to fit basically from your heel to your shoulder. And that's asking a lot.
Yeah.
Normally you use a pair of socks, a pair of pants and a jacket and they all move independently. And so that's really easy to make that fit. Yeah. In a wader, you're asking one garment to do all of it.
So how do I know if and I've wondered this myself, even though I've been in the gear review side of this industry for a while. If I'm having a hard time bending over to put my wading boots on, is that a fit problem or is that just because I'm too fat?
Or is it a you problem?
Yeah, exactly. Is it a fit problem or is it
Next
a fat
question.
problem?
That might be a you problem.
No, it's a good test though. We have we tell people to put your foot up on a bench and make sure you can flex or do a squat basically in your waders. Those are good things. If you are unable to tie your boots on.
Yeah.
There's a couple problems going on, but one definitely could be that you're on the wrong size, and it's either too short or it's not giving you enough room in order to properly move.
Yeah, because you should be able to have the same freedom of movement in a pair of waders that you would if you were just in jeans or whatever. As close to that as possible, right?
Yeah. I always like to see, I think the kneel down test is a good one. The one that I like to see the most that I just am watching people try stuff on is putting your foot up on something and almost like the height of the stool that's over here.
Yeah.
So getting like your hip and your knee at 90-degree angles.
Yeah.
And seeing that you still have a little bit of room there.
Yeah.
Because if you're tight there, then if you go beyond that, now you're limiting your range of motion.
Yeah. So fit, material, range of motion, that's all super important. Something else I want to touch on, though, Kevin, that both you and Rich brought up here just a second ago was what we're asking the wader to do, and specifically the durability of waders. Because, and I mentioned this to you guys earlier, we live in a disposable society where, we throw a lot of crap away, especially here in America. We sort of expect, our fly rods, unless we break them in a car door or we break them on a fish, our fly rods are going to last us for a while. I've got rods from I've got one from the early 80s. It's that old. It's almost as old as you, Kevin. I've got rods that have lasted for a while. And I think there's a perception out there that our waders should last 5, 6, 7, even 10 years. You always kind of hear the old guys talking, oh, my old pair of waders, they lasted forever. Or I had this pair and I fished 100 days a year in them for 10 years and they were great. And I've never really had that experience. But, I've blown through quite a few waders myself. So from a durability standpoint, let's say you plunk down the money on a premium pair of waders. What should we realistically expect? How long should those last?
It really depends on what you're doing with them, which is not a super clear answer. But, guys that are running drift boats and getting out and wade fishing runs and hopping back in drift boats, a long time. Yeah. Hundreds, of days. 100 for sure. But, guys who are, some of the most abuse we've seen out of waders is actually like some of the wade fishing guides that come out of like the East Coast, because there's blackberries and, blackberries and stickers and all that kind of stuff. And they're walking a ton, right? We've got one guy that wears our stuff and we go back and forth on product, learning about product and stuff with him. And he's walking 5 and 6 miles a day. Yeah. Every day, he's guiding and he's doing that 5 days a week, 200 days a year, right? He beats the crap out of waders, but that's a great test for us. It's kind of same things when you get into the like Pacific Northwest and you have things like Devil's Club, right? If you're frolicking through Devil's Club in your waders and just bashing through that stuff, you're going to start getting CP waders for sure. Yeah. So really, let's say the average angler, spends 30-ish days a year on the water, maybe?
Probably not that many.
That's
but
probably a lot.
We hope they do.
Yeah.
But probably closer to a dozen.
Okay.
Probably. And then if you think about third to half of maybe those are in waders, depends where you live, obviously.
Yeah.
Multiple years.
So as long as you're not really abusing the snot out of them, they should last you for a decent amount of time. But what causes waders to fail then? When they do fail, let's say, I was just telling you guys, I had a pair of waders that had been sitting in the truck for like 5 years, just sitting in the bed of my truck. And those finally, I don't know what happened to them, but they were leaking and I pulled them out. And there were like 4 straight lines on the back legs. I think I got them in some barbed wire because you could just see they were just ripped through. So obviously barbed wire is going to take your waders out. Yep.
Not wader friendly barbed wire.
No, unfortunately it's not. No. But what are some of the most common failure points in waders, and then why do they fail where they do?
I think there's a couple things that happen. There's one that I kind of refer to as death by 1,000 cuts, which is be thoughtful about where, don't just go blaze through blackberry bushes and stuff in them. You're
not invincible when you got a pair of waders.
No, like here we've got a lot of wild roses, right? Which have those real fine kind of needle thorns to them. And like, if you get punctures from wild roses, you're not going to be walking the water and be like, oh, I feel water coming in. But when you put 20 holes in from wild roses, you're gonna be like, I'm a little damp. Those are actually hard to find. It's easier to find a tear, quite frankly, and fix it than the kind of death by 1,000 cuts one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think also, I think caring for your waders the right way, right? Drying them after each use, not wadding them up and putting them in the back of your truck, and just treating they are not indestructible. They are textiles. I will wear a hole in these jeans I'm wearing right now.
Yep.
And if I just wad them up after every day that I wore them, which I might do, by the way, but
And throw them on the floor of the closet.
yeah, throw them on the other pile of jeans, but they're not going to last as long, right? So just making sure, you're not like when you're in the parking lot, you're not just like walking around on gravel. You see that all the time at boat ramps, and it just makes me cringe. People just like cruising around their car 5 or 6 times, getting ready, and
so that really matters. Then don't be walking around in your neoprene feet.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So.
I mean, think about what that's doing, right?
Yeah.
If you were, put it this way, if you were walking around the gravel parking lot barefoot, it hurt, right?
Yeah.
So all
Same
those
concept.
pokes are going into the neoprene.
Yes.
It just doesn't hurt because you got 4 millimeters of neoprene there, but doesn't mean it isn't damaging the neoprene like it's damaging your foot.
the first day you might not fail immediately right out of the gate, right?
Yeah.
But, those, back to Kevin's point of death by 1,000 cuts, a lot of these things just add up.
Yeah.
And pretty soon you go from maybe being able to detect water to feeling like you have a definite leak because you've just done enough wear and tear. But manufacturers of waders, I mean, Skwala certainly is this way. We want to work with you in order to get these repaired and back out on the water.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to work with the manufacturers.
Yeah.
In our case, give us a call, walk us through what's going on with your waders, and we have testing equipment here. We repair them right in Bozeman. We can get them back out on the water.
Yeah.
But work with the manufacturer and tell them what's going on. Tell them where you're fishing, what you might have seen, and then we test them. We'll kind of be able to put together the story of the wader too. But just be honest about what I ripped a pair of my waders because it was a barbed wire fence.
Yep.
Okay, so here's what's going on. We can actually patch that pretty effectively.
Yeah.
But talk to the manufacturer about what's going on and where you're fishing and what you think's going on, and then send them in.
Yeah.
Please dry them and clean them before you do so. That's super helpful. We open up some wader boxes and it's like a science experiment. But yeah.
Oh, so I'm sorry about the waders I gave you yesterday.
No, they're fine.
Like I thought I aired them out, but now I'm questioning whether I did.
No, you're good. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one more I'll add into that too is fit. We talked about it a bit earlier, but is fit. So if they're, if they are too short and you can't bend it, if your waders are too short for you, and you can't tie your shoelaces, like you're going to put stress on those seams, right? And so that'll show up in a couple places. It'll show up in the seat, and you're splitting the seams there, or if they're too short in the leg, it'll often show up in that attachment between the neoprene and the breathable upper.
All right. So, Rich, I do want to touch back to one thing you said about being honest when you send your waders in.
Yeah.
We see that a lot with fly rods, I think. We had somebody tell us that he broke his rod from us, from Adventures. He broke his rod on a fish. Where do you think the break was?
In the tip.
No, it's in the butt.
It was in the butt section, right in the middle.
I've actually broken a butt. I've broken a couple rods.
It's a hell
in
of
the
a
butt
fish.
section.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. I was like, oh, shoot. And, I looked at it and I was like, I don't think you broke that on a fish. Can you tell us how you actually broke it so that we can see if it's an issue with the product, right? And he wouldn't. It was kind of funny. He insisted that he broke it on a fish. So we replaced it anyways and moved on. Wasn't a huge deal, but I think that's something that anglers will feel a little embarrassed about, especially newer anglers. Like, how'd you break this? Well, I was just being stupid, and I tried to jump over a barbed wire fence in my waders. But how important is it to get that feedback on why they fail for you guys?
Everything we want to get as much feedback from anglers as possible,
Yeah.
right? Because we're here to set the bar for how great gear can be, and we can't just do it a bunch of dudes sitting in our headquarters here in Bozeman. Like we've got to get feedback. Unfortunately, we don't get to just fish every day and try stuff out.
But you own
that
a
job
fishing
would be
company.
amazing.
Come
I know.
on.
That job would be amazing. But so we need that feedback coming back from people. So
Yeah.
we had an angler that was Kevin. I think you know the story better than I, but from what my recollection of the story was, I think he was fishing for kings, and he's standing at the top of this screed field, and basically he was like, I need to get down to the bottom of this screed field. And he's like, I'm going to destroy these waders. And he did. And he was super nice and wrote us the story about everything. And we said, oh, if you wouldn't have sacrificed those waders for the king, I mean, this king is an amazing fish,
it's like a
too.
50-pound
It's
king.
a beast. Wow. It's a great fish. We're like, absolutely, we'll help you get these repaired back on the water because you did the 110% right thing.
Yeah.
Is go after that fish of a lifetime, right? Because, our gear is a conduit to these amazing experiences, and that's an amazing experience. So, but we do want people to tell us what's going on with gear, and that these are textiles, that things can fail under certain conditions. And so we want to get as much knowledge back so we can get it back to our team. And then we can continue to advance and make the best stuff in the world. And we can progress what's happening in fly fishing apparel.
Yeah. How common is it to see failures on like the seams of waders? Because I've had a few waders fail right there on the seams. I've had cheap waders fail there. I've had top of the line stuff from other manufacturers fail there. How do you guys see that a lot?
No, we see like what we see is more tears and things like that.
Really?
And stuff that's repairable. I mean, seam tape's gotten a lot better. If you remember from again, some of us will date ourselves, but if you go back to 20 years ago, like our jackets, the seam tape would fail.
Yeah.
Right. You'd actually have it peel off, and that was generally from like contamination from body oil. Like if you think about your old wading jackets, all of my old wading jackets around the neck, all the seam tape would fail. And that was from contamination from like body oils getting in there, which is why we tell you to wash your gear. It will last longer if you wash it.
How am I supposed to wash it then? What's the best way to wash? Let's go with Skwala stuff, because I know Dom Swintoski did a big piece on this over at Trout Bedding a while ago, and it was actually interesting. Everybody had different suggestions. All the different wader manufacturers did. So they were all generally the same, but it was, use this product or don't wash it or do wash it in the washing machine. So what should we do?
So let's say all gear. I'll take waders aside a little bit. So your jackets and all your gear will perform better if it's clean.
Yeah.
So
you shouldn't just let it be fish slimed for
fish slimed and covered in gink and all that stuff. It just inhibits breathability and all that. You want to keep.
That's why I was cold yesterday. I haven't washed that coat before.
There we go. You actually lose breathability when you have contaminated face textiles. Back in the day, a bit, we'll say that seam tapes would fail when you got body oils and contaminants underneath them and actually release the glue, and then all of a sudden your jacket would leak.
Yeah.
Our seam tapes are we've come a long way. Seam tapes are way better now, but you still get some of that. But that's why we tell you to wash your gear. It's all going to perform better. And in terms of waders, I'll say the same thing I told Dom. Like, we're not afraid for people to wash waders.
Like throw them in the washing machine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a couple of caveats. No, and I'll explain why.
Yeah.
Has to be a front load washing machine, period. Top load washing machine with the agitator in the middle. If your waders wrap around that, it will wreck them.
Yeah.
Like, it'll make the seams fail. We actually have a test called a killer wash.
Yeah.
And what that is actually top load washing machines where you take the timer off them and make it a switch, and you'll run a jacket or something like that in it until they fail. And I mean, by fail, I mean like the sleeves come off of them.
Yeah.
It will ultimately wreck them over we're talking 40 hours, 50 hours.
Yeah.
So, front load washing machine, delicate cycle, like a tech wash,
That's a really good excuse to go, like, if the wife's like, hey, we need a new washing machine. Okay, we got to get a front loader so I can wash my fancy waders in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, hang drying.
Yeah.
So the reason that some manufacturers, and why I say it with a caveat on some of this stuff, is seam tapes and all that are heat set. And so they will release. Like, our seam tapes release at about 150 C. a little bit less.
What's that in Fahrenheit for those of us who?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know.
I was told there'd be no math.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I hate to put you
You're
on
an
the
English
spot
teacher,
like
It's
don't you
hot.
know that?
It's very warm. It's warmer than today.
Yeah, it's more than likely warmer than your dryer is by a lot, but we don't know how hot your dryer is, right?
Yeah.
And things like that. So we're always kind of cautious. We would never say, put them on heavy duty cycle and throw them in a hot dryer. But you can let them air dry, or delicately throw them in a dryer, at least to get them to start. But people are afraid to wash technical gear. We've seen this for years, and not just here, and not just in waders.
I am. I'll 100% own up to that. I do not remember the last time I washed a pair of waders, and I didn't even really think about that really until Dom's story at Trout Bitten, and I was like, crap. So that I know that's why some of mine have failed. But what did I do right after I read that thing from Dom? Well, I got the wader wash stuff, and I got I wash mine by hand in the tub because I don't trust my washing machine because it's a top load.
Yeah.
So I was like,
don't do that.
I'm not gonna do that because Kevin won't warranty them if I do that. So when you're done with them though, should you when you're done, and this kind of goes with the care and maintenance side of things. I think Rich, you mentioned don't bunch them up in the back of the truck. Companies sell these like wader bags to stick all your boots and waders in. Is it all right to stuff them in there for a little bit and then you get them home and hang them to dry?
That's what I would do.
On the
Yeah,
river?
I would do. I mean, you want something that's going to be ventilation, right? You want moving air. So yeah, if it's a ventilated bag, it's probably fine for a little while. I would still at the end of the day take them out. I always drape mine outside on the fence or something for a couple hours to make sure they're nice and dry, and then I'll store them when they're fully dry. And that's going to make sure that those are taken care of in the best way possible, for sure.
What about if you get a whole bunch of dirt or fish slime or whatever on, because you let the fish go and then you wipe your hands or whatever, or you're like me and you're fat and you trip sometimes, so you got dirt all over your waders. What should you do in that situation? Is that something that you even need to clean out like immediately, or is that just something that you should when you're doing your annual care of your waders?
I think it depends how dirty you get them,
Yeah, I
right?
would do it on the spot.
If you're, it's funny because a lot of us fish drift boats all the time, right?
Yeah.
You're like ginking flies up, and then what do? You just rub it right here. If you're grinding stuff like that in them, you should wash them every once in a while. The reality is those areas that are absolutely packed with dirt, grime, and gink and gunk, like that area, the wader is not breathing very well.
Yeah.
And so you just spent $500, $600, $700, $800 on like a breathable wader so to keep you comfortable.
Yeah.
Keep it breathing, and wash them.
So if it doesn't breathe, it's still going to stay waterproof?
Yeah, it won't. The laminate, it won't make the laminate fail, but you will feel damp underneath for sure. Yeah.
Okay. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and also proper layering and things like that
Yeah.
too. If you're wearing, we always want to make sure that people aren't wearing jeans underneath their waders. And
Yeah, I'm really glad that was going to be my next thing to bring up was, what should we be wearing under our waders? Because that's
Not jeans.
not jeans.
Anything but jeans.
Anything that's not cotton, like stay away from cotton.
Okay. Why?
So, cotton doesn't dry, right?
Yeah.
And so you've just spent all this money on this high performance, breathable, waterproof, breathable garment. And if you wear cotton underneath it, you're going to stay damp next to skin. And so we love merino wool.
As do I. I will preach
I think
merino wool.
Merino is a great underwader product. But like some sort of lofted fleece or whatever, if it's cold, you're dealing with cold water, you need to trap some air. And insulation's basically trapping air. So how do you do that? You can do it with down. You can do it with high lofted fleece.
Yeah.
You can do it with like a lofted merino, which is how we tend to solve that problem. But you want to keep your whole system moving moisture, right? And that's the thing about comfort, right? We spend all this time, money, and effort on these like super breathable, durable, waterproof textiles, and you can kind of wreck that system if you don't wear the right things underneath it.
Yeah. So all those times my buddies made fun of me for throwing my my pajamas on underneath my waders, I was doing the right thing. My fleece pajamas.
You were the smarter one.
Good.
You were smarter.
See, I knew it.
Yes.
Were they wearing jeans?
I don't know I can't remember what they were wearing. Probably jeans.
It's very common, actually. You see a lot of people do it, and I know really, really good anglers that fish with jeans underneath. And I'm like, I wish you wouldn't, but
And sometimes you don't have any choice because you're just going straight from work to the river. And
that's the case for sure.
Yeah, you got to jump in. Yep. Is it going to ruin them if you're wearing jeans under your waders?
No, it's just a comfort thing, right? Okay. So you're just, first of all, jeans are not the most mobile things in the world, right? No. So I mean, you're not doing exercises in jeans for a reason.
Yeah.
And also you're just going to be clammy. Oftentimes when people think their waders are leaking, and this happens here occasionally, you get a wader back and oh my gosh, it's leaking in the right shin.
Yeah.
And you put them on the test bed and you're like, these things are fine.
Yeah.
And you find out that they're layering inappropriately and they're just sweating.
Yeah.
And it's not able to escape out the wader. Or the breathability has been, put to the point where it's not breathing that well. People assume it's a leaking garment, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we show you how we test them, like, and what we do and how much pressure we put under the wader, we can assure you, like, if we're not finding a leak, there isn't one.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
We're putting a ton of pressure on them. And it shows every pinprick, even stuff that doesn't actually leak.
Stuff you didn't even know was there.
Yeah, stuff you didn't know was there. We find it with the way we test, and we've gotten waders back that people swore were leaking and nothing.
Huh. So I think the last thing we touched on, well, maybe we'll want to circle back on this one more time. So we've got well cared for pair of waders. How often should I be washing them? Let's say like once a year, twice a year,
a couple times a year, probably.
A couple times a year.
Yeah.
All right,
Again, it depends on what you're doing
and how dirty you get them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I've cared for them, I'm washing them. I'm doing my absolute best with them. I can expect. I think Kevin, you were throwing a number around like 100-ish days out of something is pretty reasonable before you could start to see maybe some failures start to take place.
Yeah, again, it all depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, it all depends where you're walking.
Go run through rose bushes on day one. You're going to start to see some leaks.
Exactly. Exactly. I think the last thing I want to touch on too is I think the fly rod world they've done an okay job of this. Maybe they haven't. To me, I think they have, explaining why fly rods cost so much money these days because of all the tech that goes into developing them, all of the proprietary equipment that you have to get to make a fly rod. But I mean, waders, it's just some fancy fabric that you sew together, right? So
I wish.
A little bit more to it.
I wish it was that easy.
Yeah, and then we'd all be printing money at this point, right? So what is it specifically that makes a really good pair of waders? I mean, some of them are going for $1,000 right now. A top of the line pair can run you $1,000.
Sure.
So why does it cost that much?
So from a materials perspective, again, you think about what you're asking these to do. You're asking a product to be fully waterproof and breathe while it's submersed underwater. So the textiles that we're building waterproof breathable waders on are very expensive.
Yeah.
And then the construction side of it, because they're completely unforgiving. A jacket, like I refer to a jacket, building a waterproof jacket is kind of child's play compared to building a wader, because jackets, they deal with a lot of rain, but it kind of runs off and it's not under pressure. And a pair of waders, when you're wading over your waist, right, you have several PSI pressure on trying to poke through every one of those seams. And there's a lot of seams in a wader. So the construction, there's a lot goes on there, from how they're stitched to how they're taped and the seam tape and how we do that. And then to the materials themselves.
Yeah. And I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the materials you guys are using at Skwala are proprietary?
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah.
A lot of our textiles we develop from scratch. So we're developing a face textile, working with a laminate. One of the things that we do that's a bit different is that we can fine tune our waterproof breathable laminates. So we can control how waterproof and how breathable, and you don't get both, right? You can get crazy levels of waterproofness, what they call like a 50K membrane, but 50K membranes don't breathe.
Yeah.
Whereas in some of our lighter kind of highly breathable pieces, like a carbon jacket, for example, we leaned a lot into the breathability side, still fully waterproof, but focused on breathability. So we can control our laminate, control our face textiles, choose backers, like what touches your skin, and use different things there to all build like the most comfortable product for your day on the water.
And that all costs quite a bit of money at the end of the day.
Yeah, and also you're building the stuff in the best factories in the world.
Yep.
And this is so we're not going to skimp on those things because it's a highly challenging thing to do. Yeah.
So what's R&D look like then for a new pair of waders? Because I know you guys have a new pair of waders coming out, the Back Eddy. And I don't think people understand the R&D cost on a lot of products as well. I mean, how long did it take you guys to go from, okay, we need this other wader in our lineup to getting it out to the public?
This often shocks people
Yeah.
how long this takes. It's 3 years.
Really?
Yeah, and it's every bit of that. It's almost impossible to do it faster than that.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people can't believe that. But there's multiple R&D cycles, and there's testing in between every one of them. And then there's things like development of textiles, and then because we're building kind of our own textile packages, just even lead times. Like once we press the go button, it's almost 8 months.
Really?
Between when we're like, okay, this thing's 100%, we're where we want to be. Let's build them. We still don't see it for another 8 months.
Really? That's crazy.
By the time you get all the pieces of the puddle, like a wader, like a bill of materials on a wader,
Yeah.
it's like 60 to 80 parts.
Oh, wow.
And so you need to get all of that together.
It's not just some fancy material that you stitch together.
No.
No.
Yeah.
No, there's lots of moving parts, but through R&D, right? Your prototype one will have substitute materials on it, or right, we always laugh proto ones is like a brown jacket with purple sleeves and pink cuffs, and as you start moving through that, but you got to test through every cycle, and so it takes years to do it.
And I mean, could you speed that up if you just didn't care about the quality side of things as much?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't obviously do that.
Yeah.
And you can do different colorways sooner than that and things like that. But
Yeah.
the R&D process is exhausting. And if you're an angler out there, that's what you kind of want from
Yeah.
a brand like this.
Yeah.
Is you want to make sure that they've done their homework and they've put it through the ringer and that they've evaluated the best materials for whatever use.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time. I mean, for us, even it's like, wow, I feel like we've been working on this wader forever.
Yeah.
And it's
You're probably sick of talking about it
not
at this
out.
point.
Yeah.
Now you get to,
and I
because now
finally
we
get
know.
to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, and I think you made this point earlier, Rich, as well, that you don't realize how crummy your day can be with the wrong gear, especially with waders.
Yep.
So
100%.
it really is important. And this is something that I would tell folks just not to skimp on anyways. You don't want to skimp on your waders, but how important is it? And I think we'll probably just end with this, give you guys the little, the floor here. How important is it to make sure from Skwala's point of view that you're giving the angler the best day out of the water possible? And then, what's the pitch for, why come look at Skwala if we need some new waders or any other technical apparel?
Well, one of the things we haven't quite covered, but we've kind of danced around a little bit, is I would recommend people out there to really examine how they're going to use their waders, right?
Yeah.
So I think people just say, a lot of people have one pair of waders, right? And I have many more than that. Yeah. But they want to buy, so they're thinking, okay, well, I need this, and they really think about how you're going to use them. Are you mostly a walk wade angler? Are you mostly a drift boat angler? Do you live in where you fish mostly in the summer, but in cold water? Are you a traveler that goes up to BC and New Zealand and Alaska and places like that? Do you really, really love a full zip wader, which some people just will buy nothing but that?
Yeah.
But
They
really
are
think about,
really convenient.
They are very convenient. Think about the intended use. Right? Like our carbon wader is probably the wader I wear more than any wader I've ever had, and it's because it converts easily to a waist high. Because honestly, in March to June, when I'm wearing waders a ton, it can be warm out, be 60s to 80s, but the water's freezing. And so think about what you're going to get the most use out of that wader, and then really look for that wader. So for Skwala, it would be the carbon, which is the fast, light, travel, converts easily, vents out heat easily, effectively works best as a pant wader that you can easily convert to a chest high, or the RS, which is that bomber more durable textile. Kevin talked about the ratio of durability and breathability. It's going to over-index in durability.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a little bit more full-featured. Maybe you're a guide, you need more storage. So think about really how you're going to use it, because that's how we start.
Yeah.
That gets into our head, right? Because we start we don't start with, we need to make something for X dollars. We start with, this is the need of the angler. We've done a lot of angling in our life, and we've been around the sport a long time. So we're thinking about solving those problems. And so think about what your problem set really is, and that can help you get into the better wader. And then talk to your retailer or your manufacturer about, I usually do this kind of angling 80% of the time, and we can get you in the right wader.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't build a best wader. We get that question all the time. What's your best wader?
Yeah.
And we always respond the same way. What are you going to do with it? Right. One thing that's a little bit different from us too, is we build to intended end use, right? So we're thinking, like Rich said, about what are we going to do with this thing? What do we want it to do? And how do we build the best product that does that? We also don't build what's referred to as good, better, best. We don't have an opening price point, a mid, and an upper price point. We build the best thing we can build for the intended end use, and that kind of price lands where it lands.
Yeah.
So a carbon wader is less than an RS wader because it doesn't have a zipper.
Yeah.
Waterproof zippers at retail is more than $100. It doesn't have a really robust feature set up top. It's kind of like minimalist in design by intention, because it was designed as a kind of convertible hot weather, cold water kind of, guys who fish spring creeks or things like that. But it's super mobile, super breathable, and it is the wader that most of us wear most of the time.
Yeah, to that point, I think the best Skwala wader for me, what I would say is probably the carbon for that exact reason, because it's more. I love the RS at this time of year when it's cold.
Yeah, sure, it's
great. But that carbon's the one that I reach for the most too. I think for all those reasons, it gets the job done. So awesome. Well, I think that does it for us, guys. Is there anything you guys want to add at the end of the show?
No, appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks.
I appreciate it a lot.
Good to talk to you, Spencer.
Yeah, it's good to be up here and get out of the Wyoming wind for a minute and come up to the
our
Montana wind.
The Montana wind.
Yeah,
It's a whole different breed of wind.
it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bougier.
It's a little bougier. That's right. Yeah, it's a little nicer.
Hey folks, Spencer Durrant here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Untangled. We really appreciate it. And thanks again to Rich and Kevin for taking their time to help us out and do this show. Now, the surprise I mentioned earlier on, well, here it is. Skwala really wants to help Untangled listeners be more comfortable out on the water, so they're offering a 10% off code for listeners of this show. That's really pretty generous, pretty awesome. We really appreciate it. So you can use the code UNTANGLED10, that's code UNTANGLED10, to get 10% off your next order over at Skwala Fishing. There's a link to their website in the podcast description. Again, use code UNTANGLED10 for 10% off your next order over at Skwala. And thanks again for taking the time to listen to Untangled.